Good morning, everybody. It's great to have you on board for our webinar this morning. I'd like to welcome you to our session and looking forward to have a great informational session with the team from NETSTOCK. I'd like to welcome both Andy Hiscox and Brad Wood from NETSTOCK, who are going to be taking us on our session today. Just in terms of a little bit of housekeeping, you will notice within your Zoom interface there is the Q&A button. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the session as we go. We will keep the questions and answers until the end of the session, because of course, quite often you'll ask the question and you'll just preempt the next thing that Andy's going to discuss. So please ask any questions as you need to as we go. We'll moderate those at the end and make sure that everyone's questions are covered off in time. We have approximately an hour for this session, which includes a presentation and a demonstration of NETSTOCK by Andy, and we'll then run through the questions and answers at the end. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to Andy Hiscox from NETSTOCK, who is the CEO of NETSTOCK Australia. Welcome, Andy, and over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Stephen. Okay, so welcome to our webinar today, to the webinar around Optimise inventory policy to boost sales and reduce investment and improve planning efficiency. So today, essentially, that's sort of the agenda. We've already done the housekeeping bit. We'll talk through some key inventory fundamentals and how that sets the framework for optimizing your inventory. We'll spend most of the time in the software actually showing you how we do that. And then, as Stephen was saying at the end, we'll run through some Q&A. So we've basically covered that, but obviously if we get a lot of questions and we're unable to answer them all in the session, more than happy to email either Stephen or myself or Brad, and we will respond to those. So let's get straight into it. So firstly, I'm just going to cover 4 basic inventory optimization fundamentals and how they impact our framework of how the whole thing hangs together. So one of the first and most important things is that we need to actually measure inventory risk. Otherwise, we're unable to determine what the optimum level of inventory should be. Now, inventory risk is generally driven by 2 key inventory drivers. One is from the supply side, how good are our vendors at delivering on time and in full? And of course, a vendor could be an external vendor, an external supplier. It could be a manufacturing facility. It could even be a distribution center that supplies your distribution network. And then the second thing is monitoring how well we actually forecast. How reliable are we at actually predicting our future sales? The next key point is to be able to set realistic inventory targets so that you can have a coherent inventory plan. If your inventory targets are unrealistic, say in terms of reducing inventory and improving the fill rate, then you've already set yourself up to fail before you've started. So we need a mechanism to be able to enter our company strategies and goals, and then to be able to model those to ensure that they actually give us a coherent and realistic plan going forward. The third thing is, once you've set that plan and that policy, you then obviously need to be able to test the validity of that plan by predicting into the future. So you may have a scenario where your inventory is unbalanced, you have a lot of excess, and you have a number of gaps in your inventory. Obviously, it's easy to fill the gaps. You just replenish the new stock, but you can't wave a wand and get rid of your excess. That takes time. So inventory may go up before it comes down, and we need to be able to predict that. And then we need a mechanism to measure how we're actually performing against those goals. So we need some kind of dashboards that will monitor our actual stock against our model stock, and will monitor our fill rate being our ability to deliver to our customers directly off our shelves against some fill rate targets. So those are the key sort of 4 inventory fundamentals, which I'll bring up and show you when we get into the software. Now let's talk a little bit about why we hold inventory. If your vendors always delivered on time and in full, and remember, a vendor could be an external vendor, either local or overseas, or it could be a manufacturing facility or a distribution center. If they always delivered on time and in full, and we could predict exactly what we were going to sell, then there would be very little reason to hold inventory at all. We'll just match supply and demand. And the only thing causing you to hold inventory would be minimum order quantities, minimum production runs, having to fill containers and things like that. But in reality, of course, we all know that vendors deliver late and underdeliver, and we underestimate future demand. And in both of those scenarios, we have the risk of running out of stock or risk to our stock availability. So we need to measure these two factors by item, by location, in order to work out what the optimum level of inventory would be to support that. So think of two scenarios. One, where we have a nice, easily forecastable demand pattern. We order it all the time. The vendor's pretty reliable at delivering on time, as opposed to another scenario where it's highly erratic sales, very difficult to forecast, and our vendors don't deliver it that well. They need vastly different levels of stock to provide the same fill rate. Now let's just examine that risk in a little bit more detail. So what I'm showing you here is a sales forecast versus, actual sales versus a forecast, two different scenarios, both of them the same forecast error. In one scenario, we've been over forecasting with very little risk of under forecasting. Another one, we have a significant bias towards under forecasting, but the error is the same. Traditional philosophy says, measure your forecast error, used as an input to compute your optimum safety stock level, and therefore the safety stock would be the same because the error is the same. But clearly that's not correct. In this scenario, we can see we've been over forecasting. We have very little risk of under forecasting and propensity for running out of stock. So in fact, I need less safety stock to protect myself in this scenario. But in this scenario, I need significantly more safety stock. So when we measure risk as opposed to error, we get a different result in terms of the minimum or safety stock levels we need to hold. We do the same thing, of course, with supply risk, and I'll show you all of that when we get into the software. Now, if you think about this question of how much should we invest in inventory, in the business, there's always two conflicting parts of the business that are putting pressure on our inventory levels. Sales would like to have as much inventory as possible because if we run out of stock or something, potentially we could lose the sale. So I want to keep stock of every single product and as much as possible. Finance are constantly looking to get the inventory down. They want the stock turns up. They want to get rid of excess. And then operationally, whoever's doing the planning has to resolve all of that. So normally we have the situation where there's no true connection there. So what we need is a platform that enables us to enter our business strategies in terms of fill rate targets. That automatically needs to compute the amount of investment to support that, and therefore show us how much we need to invest in inventory and what sort of stock turns we're going to get. So we need the ability to model that, and I'll show you that when we have a look at the software demo. We also then have to cover the risk in your business. And risk, as we saw, has those two main drivers. How reliably can we forecast, and how good are our vendors at delivering on time and in full? Risk is going to get multiplied by things like the length of the lead time. So if I can buy stuff locally, clearly I have less risk than if I have to buy from overseas and it takes 3 or 4 months. How frequently I order. If I can generate a recommended replenishment plan every day, I clearly have less risk because I can respond to change than if we're forced to order only once a month because we have to fill containers and it doesn't make sense if I order more frequently. So the order cycle again will impact my risk. And then things like constraints. So our vendor might say, we need to order this product in batches of 50 or 100, and the minimum order is 5,000. So all of those constraints, again, impact my risk. So what we need is a platform that monitors all of this for us automatically, allows us to enter our business goals, and then ensures that the amount of money we invest in inventory is driven by our business strategy and is optimized to cover the inventory risk and is on a single platform. So if we go for a very high fill rate target, and that says we have to hold X amount of inventory, but that doesn't fit within our financial strategy, then clearly what we'll need to do is maybe stratify those full rate targets or go for a lower target, or maybe try and work on the risk and get the risk down. So the whole idea is that that investment will be optimized to cover the inventory risk, and then ensure that every recommended replenishment plan falls in line with those inventory policies and company targets. Now let's just look how this plays out at an individual product level. So down the left here, I've got physical on in stock, and here a prediction into the future. So the system will create a forecast for us, and I'll go into that in some detail when we look at the software. And it starts to decrement the stock by that forecast. I have some outstanding orders, works orders, purchase orders, transfers arriving. As they arrive, they increase my stock, and the green line is the lead time. So now what that policy that we've set does is create this ideal inventory profile for us. It creates a minimum stock level, which is dynamic on a rolling basis for 365 days and responds to fill rate targets. The higher the fill rate target, the higher the minimum stock level will be. The lower the fill rate target, the lower the level will be. It also responds to risk. So as our vendors are delivering better and better, so I have less risk, so I need less safety stock. Same thing with the forecast. And then also takes account of our forecasts, which could have seasonality, could have product growth, product decline. So I get this minimum stock level. I also get the maximum stock level, which is now in line with our overall company goals. And now we can evaluate in each and every single product and see how they fit against this ideal picture. Here, the system is creating a recommended replenishment plan for the next 12 months on a rolling basis by day. In this example, we're ordering about a month's worth every day, and I'll show you how we optimize that to reduce the number of orders we place, but not increase our inventory. So if we looked at this product, we'd say, well, we're quite overstocked, significantly above our ideal, but it's a long lead time, don't have that much on order. And by the time we actually get to the lead time, we're in perfect balance. So this item would deem to be perfectly balanced. But we may have other products where we've potentially over-ordered them, and by the time the order arrives, I'm above the ideal zone. What about this scenario? In here, by the time we hit the lead time, we actually have excess stock, so this is deemed to be an excess stock item. We also have scenarios where we're going to run out of stock before the next order arrives. And in fact, in this scenario, I'm going to run out again. So we're now evaluating each and every product, and based on these ideal profiles, which have been driven by our inventory policy, we're assessing them to see where your inventory sits. And then, of course, you get that third scenario where I'm currently actually out of stock. We can see here that we're not holding enough, and we have a significant order placed to get us back to the right level of stock. Now, how NETSTOCK works, just before we go into the software demo, it essentially is a pure cloud product that integrates automatically with EXO and Advanced. Takes a very short time to set up the connectors, and then all the data that's relevant from an inventory planning perspective is passed automatically from EXO or Advanced to the NETSTOCK app servers in the cloud. You access that server via a browser, any kind of browser, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Internet Explorer, Edge, and it normally generates 3 types of outputs: recommended works orders, recommended purchase orders, and recommended transfers that you review and can adjust, and then press a button, and on demand they get sent back to the ERP to create the actual purchase order, the actual transfer, and the actual works order. Okay, so let's have a look how this all hangs together by looking into the software. So first thing that I'm going to do is look at an individual product so we understand all the elements that drive our risk profile at an item level and how the forecasts are created. Once we understand the item, then we'll go and have a look at some models. And when we cover the individual item, we'll also cover multiple demand streams, such as bills of materials and distribution, as well as normal forecast items. So out of EXO, all the basic data flows through: the preferred vendor, the groupings, the costs, the selling prices, and so forth. In this little example that we're looking at here, we can see, apologies, we can see over here that this data is as at the 8th of August 2011. So that's our current date for the demo information. And we're 8 days into the current period, which happens to be August. So let's start firstly at the forecasting piece. So down here, we can actually see our historical sales. We've done 150 in the first 8 days of August. We did 618 in July, 501 in June, and so on backwards. So this is our historical sales. the system automatically creates a forecast for us. It has a whole variety of algorithms, Box-Jenkins, weighted average, seasonal models, binomial distribution, uses all of these models to create a forecast for us. On a daily basis, it will track every forecast in every single warehouse and report on those which are not tracking well, always in descending order of impact, and we'll have a look at that when we look at our performance measures. So here we can see we sold 29% of the forecast. We're actually 25% through the current period. If we continue to sell at this rate, we're going to oversell the forecast by the end of the month. So in the system, you're able to adjust forecast at an item, at a group, or at a company level. So you could go to any individual period, put in any numbers you deem to be appropriate to deal with projects, promotions, and so forth. And here we can see now the final forecast is adjusted above the computer, which always remains in the background. So you can make adjustments to any periods you like. If you like the profile and you want to just adjust a set of periods, you can select whatever you want. You can then drag the forecast up and down based on line with the computer profile as it's been created. As it looked like we were under forecasting this, let's raise the forecast up in this scenario, and here you can see those have now been frozen. We can again evaluate to see how good is the forecast at this point, and we can see now we're getting pretty close between those percentages. So if we continue to sell at this rate, we'll probably sell a little bit more than 577, but we'll be quite close to that by the end of the month. And of course, those forecasts have been frozen. So normally we would suggest you capture a comment saying as to why. So forecasts can be adjusted at an item, at a group, at a company level, and I'll show you that in a moment. And it uses all of these different algorithms to best determine which algorithm best suits which item at that point in time when it generates the forecast. So quickly, before we now delve into the risk, let's just have a look at a macro level in terms of the forecasts and how we can adjust those in the macro level. So when we're looking at forecasts at a macro level, we could look at it at a warehouse level, we could look at it at a company level, we could also filter it in any way for any type of grouping that we might have or any type of classification we might have. So we can make adjustments at this top level. We can select periods we'd like to adjust. So let's say from February to March, we'd like to get a 11% uplift. We can model those kinds of changes, see the impact of that. There we can see this has been done in cost price, but of course we could have modeled in selling price marginal units, and we can graphically see the new change or the new forecast we're now suggesting. We can see the difference there between the periods in dollar value terms at cost price, and we can click apply. So as we can see, we can make adjustments to forecasts at any level. We also have the ability to scroll through and review forecasts within a group. I won't go into that now. We don't have enough time to cover all of that during the webinar. Apologies. Let's go back now to that individual product and understand the various risk elements associated with this individual item. In the background, we obviously need to monitor our forecasting performance because that's what's going to determine our risk. So the software will record all our forecast shots for us. It'll then show what did we sell versus, what did we forecast versus what did we sell? What is the variance? Here you can see the negatives are all shown in red because that's the under forecast potential for running out of stock. And over here, the darker colors potential for generating excess by over forecasting and selling less than you expected. If we now have a look here, we can see that in terms of the forecasting, we've actually been over forecasting this product a little bit. And because we're over forecasting, we can shrink away some of the safety stock. Now, I haven't explained the safety stock to you yet, but this element of the forecast will negatively or reduce the safety stock a little bit because we've been over forecasting. And if we've been over forecasting, we would have been over purchasing and generated and have inadvertently built some of the safe stock into the forecast. We have some risk still because we have under forecast before and we could do it again. So using that, it will then influence the safety stock in terms of days based on the risk. We do the same thing on the supply side. So here we can see to get to the ABC warehouse from the Consolidated Tire Company, it takes 45 days to get that stock. So let's have a look, because from day one, once we connect to your XO World, we get all of your data and we can immediately assess the delivery performance of every item at every warehouse automatically. So here we think we get this product in 45 days, but actually it's more like 55. And we can see we've had a number of late deliveries, 17 late, 9 early, and we've also had a short supply. So if we just have a brief peek into the data, we can see here on this order number, we all ordered on the 9th of August. We got a delivery on the 17th of October. We ordered, it took 69 days. Sorry, it was receipt in stock on the 17th of October. It took 69 days. We ordered 370, we got 370. So from the supply side, we have a little bit of the reverse. We have 45 days is way too short. If we're ordering based on that, we're constantly going to be running out of stock. So we need to add a minimum of 10 days into the safety stock. But even if I use a 55-day lead time, that still doesn't cut it, because we've delivered in 69 days, we've short supplied once and so forth, and that's where the risk element comes. So based on this risk profile for this item, of course, which is dynamic and changing as things change into the future, and based on a target fill rate, which I'll show you how we set this when we set that inventory policy I talked about, we're going to need to hold 21-day safety stock on this product. And remember what the safety stock is all about. That is the minimum level of stock we should hold to protect ourselves from late or under deliveries, or from under forecasting demand and potentially causing a stock out. Now let's just quickly click on the dashboards and pick another product. Same fill rate target, 98%, but look at the amount of safety stock that we're looking to hold there, more than treble. Why? When we look at the data, it becomes very obvious. If we look at this vendor, we think we get deliveries in 90 days, but they delivered in 120, 128, 133, 151. So the deliveries have progressively got worse. What about the forecasting? You can see a very big band of variance. And if we have a look here, we can see over the last period, we manually overwritten the forecast, and we didn't do such a good job because we missed out quite badly over the last number of periods. So clearly, I have much higher forecast risk here as well. So for the same level of fill rate, I need treble the amount of safety stock. So the risk profile and the fill rate is now giving a direct influence on the ideal amount or optimal amount of stock that I need to hold to support these different products. So going back to the one where we had 21 days and the 98% fill rate, we now have a lead time, we have a safety stock, and we have part of a replenishment cycle, which we set when we set our inventory policy, and I'll show you how we do that in a moment. Now we've got all the data necessary to do the replenishment on this item. I've got the physical stock. We don't have any custom orders. I've got some allocations. I have some constraints. When we buy this, we have to buy 300 and we have to buy in multiples of 50. So now we can see the little projections here. So in the background, what happens is the forecast is broken into daily buckets. As you can see, the forecast is changing as we get into the future. This is the 8th of August, obviously, and now we're moving into the future. And we can also see the minimum and maximum levels changing. As the forecast peaks up, they get higher and higher. As the forecast drops, they start to drop back down. It also simulates the predicted opening stock, taking into account anything we have on order. So we have a purchase order here arriving on the 1st of September for 196. When that 196 arrives, it's going to increase my inventory and so on into the future. So now it simulates that picture, and now we can see what the little ideal profile actually shows us. So this is not an ordering report or anything like that. It's just a little screen inquiry. Here it indicates how we need to replenish the product. You can see the recommended replenishment quantities are all very rounded. That's because I have to order in multiples of 50. So it generates that plan going forward, and we can see when we need to order it and when it should arrive into stock, and that's what it's simulating for us here into the future. In this example, it looks like we've actually over-ordered the product. So every item now, once we've set our inventory policy, which I haven't shown you, but based on the risk, we'll create these ideal profiles for us. So let's quickly have a look at that other one we looked at down here on our dashboard. And here we can see a product where we're actually not holding enough. We're going to run out of stock, and our potentially run out again. But now we've ordered enough, it's just arriving a little bit late, and then eventually we'll be back at the appropriate levels, and we'll try and keep the stock at this level, because this is a high-risk product that needs significantly more safety stock to protect it. All right, let's quickly now go and have a look at the other demand streams very quickly. Apologies, that's what I want to do. Let's look at this individual product here. See, we've had a couple of questions in the Q&A, which we'll get to in a moment. So here we have a scenario where we have a product that has multiple demand streams. So this is a central distribution location that supplies a number of branches. And when we look at its demand pattern, we can see there's a sales forecast as well as a distribution forecast. So as before, we have our sales forecast, and now we have a distribution forecast, which is computed by going to each of the locations that draw stock from this main warehouse and predicting what they need to get transferred to them to keep their stock at the appropriate levels. So it'll take account of stock right through the network and ensure that our replenishment to the main or distribution center is taking account of everyone's needs. Here you can see the remote store is in a little bit of excess. They don't need stock for a while. The small branch needs stock immediately, and the others are also in excess, don't need stock at this point in time. This product is also manufactured, so it's part of a bill of materials. Let's click on this item here, which is glue. And here we can see glue goes into a variety of different finished goods. And if we click on the table, we can actually see the demand that's being generated from the manufactured items. We need to make 4,100 of product 23006. Based on the ratio of glue, I need 47.4 grams of glue. So it obviously computes that for everything that glue is being consumed into, and then sums that up into a total. So now we've actually covered all the various demand streams. Now we can go and have a look at some inventory policy modeling. And then once we've done the modeling, we can look at some projections and then some ordering and then some performance monitoring. So let's firstly go and look at some policy. Sorry. Just trying to step through these. So one of the first things that we need to try and do is ensure that we set policy appropriate to the product's contribution and movement within the business. So what we do is we try to create a 9-block movement grid based on the product's contribution to the business and the velocity or movement of the product. This can be based on your historical sales or your future forecast. You can weight it by cost price, selling price, or margin, and you put some percentages in. So in this example, forecast times cost, that's going to contribute 80% towards turnover, will get an A ranking. Any item that's going to contribute the next 16 will get a B, and the remaining 4% will get a C ranking. Obviously, as products sell and move through the classification, so they will move up and down this classification ranking. Same thing here, but we ignore the value weighting and we just do it on the product movement, high, medium, or low. Once we've done that, we now are able to group products into a 9-block matrix. Just before we get to the matrix, there are 2 other types of products: non-stocked or product classifications, non-stocked and obsolete. Non-stocked is like indent ordering or stuff you're trying to phase out of, and obsolete is product that you're absolutely trying to get out of. Everything else falls into our grid. So across the top, we have our items accounting for 80% of our turnover, and down here, our fastest movers accounting for 80% of our volume. Clearly, these are my most important products. You can see how many fall in that category: the stock value, the average demand, the current fill rate, and the target fill rate we're trying to achieve. Now, the whole idea of putting items into these grids, and of course, we can, by the way, just click here, get a full list of those items, also get a view of the health of them, how many are okay, how many are stocked out, and so forth. sorry. Let's get back to the grid. But the reason for putting products in these little blocks is because each of these little blocks has a unique kind of characteristic. There are certain products that move really quickly but don't contribute much to your turnover. So down this row we have our top movers, sorry, our items that are only contributing 4% to the turnover, but down here we have our fastest movers accounting for 80% of the volume. So this little intersection here are the products that are moving really quickly but not contributing much to the turnover. You can see here there's 11K per month for all 91 products, whereas over here for the 130 it's 1.5 million. Now the idea is now we can set policy appropriately because we can order 3 or 4 months of stock here. 3 months here is $36,000. 1 month of stock here is $325,000, almost 10 times as much as 3 months. So here we want to order as many days as possible. We can go for the highest fill rate target because it's not going to cost us much to invest in this. And these products are moving, people want them. So now we're ensuring we never run out of them. We order them infrequently, we reduce the number of orders, and we don't inflate the inventory. Over here, we'd love to target 99.99% fill rate because they're my most important products, but maybe we can't afford it. So now we can set the policy as we see, as we feel is appropriate for that group. We can see what we're currently getting, and we're going to try and order these as frequently as we can, a week's worth if we possibly can, because if I ordered a month's worth here, I'm ordering $1.5 million worth of stock. Here are my slow-moving expensive items. Maybe these are specific to your company. People can't get them anywhere else. They're specialist items. They might be prepared to wait for these. Maybe we can target a lower fill rate. And what about these? These are the red zone. These are the items that are actually not moving or contributing. And you can see how many items sit in that category. So in this case, it's my range rationalization group. What about the value of the stock? Well, this is the second or third biggest stocking category. And what about demand? Well, all of the actions here. So if we're looking after these, now we would be dealing with probably 90% of the company turnover. So the idea here is that you can very quickly set the appropriate policy in these little blocks and grids, and they will then give every single item an appropriate cycle quantity and a target fill rate to compute the safety stock. And now we have pretty much everything we need to do the ordering, except before we do the ordering, we need to see the output of that, which is our models. So instead of trying to cover all 5,000 SKUs here, let's just look at our A items. There are currently 335 A items that are accounting for 80% of my turnover. I'm currently holding 4.4 million, but the ideal model is 3.7. I'm getting 87% fill rate, but I should be getting 96. So from a model perspective, it's looking good. We actually need less stock to get a higher fill rate. And the reason we don't have that high fill rate yet or that level of stock is because my stock is not properly balanced. So I could quickly see how many are perfectly balanced. You can see almost direct, completely in line with my model. And the target fill rate is getting close. It's not quite there because some of the items were out of the zone before, but now they're all in the perfect zone and they would get the green okay and come up for normal reordering. What about these? Top sellers, 58 of them, where we're below our target fill rate significantly. We could be potentially losing $488,000 of sales a month. These need to come up for emergency ordering, and they will do. Same with the potential stockouts. Not holding enough or not the right balance, come up for emergency ordering. The surplus, I'm holding double what I need, getting a very good fill rate. I would hope so with double the stock, but I've ordered some more excess. And the excess stock, I'm holding 5.5 times the model. So I'm getting higher than the target model, but at what cost? So those items don't come up for reorder. Potential stocked out and okay do. And overall, our models are looking okay. So if we looked at the model, it's saying we've got 8.7 million. We need 5.1 million. You're getting 88% fill rate, but you should be able to get 92 if you get your inventory appropriately balanced, now that we've set it according to the appropriate risk factors. So now we should be good to go and do our ordering. But before we do our ordering, we actually need to run a little projection to see what our stock is going to look like sorry, what our stock is going to look like going forward. So let's have a look at a projection. So as we saw an item, we predicted what our stock would look like into the future. We can do the same thing at a summary level. And if you looked at this scenario, this would be a little concerning. We're currently at 52.7 million in stock. If we order according to this new policy, we could peak up at 68 million. So a little bit over $17 million increased in inventory. So if our goal was to get inventory down, we're going to get a little bit of a nasty shock in the next couple of months if we replenish according to the plan. Yes, stock is going to come down, not by that much, by about 8 or 9% over the next 12 months, but we're going to have that big peak. So why is it going to that peak? Well, currently we're starting at an 80% fill rate, and we're targeting to get to 96% fill rate. So that's a 12 percentage point improvement. Maybe we can't afford that. Maybe we need to go for 86 or 88 first. It's higher than where we are, and get the inventory reduction happening first before we then start to target that higher fill rate. Also, if you have a look at our future forecast, which may have been influenced by the sales team, that looks pretty optimistic. I'm going from 12 million to 36 million, eventually up to 50 million. So that looks like a really aggressive sales growth target. Maybe that's not quite in line. So this is our prediction into the future that we want to check to make sure that what we're planning to do is actually going to take us where we're going to go. So let's have a look. Sorry, I keep pressing the wrong button. Let's have a look at a scenario which looks far more amenable. So here we can see we're at 8.7 million. Stock is going to go down. It goes up, back a little bit again, and then starts to keep coming down. So about a 20% reduction over the next 12 months with no dramatic increase. So that looks pretty good. Our fill rate target is going to go up by 8 percentage points. It's going to take a little bit of time to get there because I have some long lead times in this environment, and obviously it takes time to get that stock in. My stock turns are going to improve. The future forecast looks okay, and the recommended replenishment plan looks reasonable. So this would now say, if I saw this as a future projection, I'm now ready to go and do my replenishment, and everything looks like it's going to give us what we wanted in terms of our goals into the future. So now we've gone through those first 3 steps that I talked about. Number 1, we've measured the risk. Number 2, we've set our inventory policy, and maybe we've run a few different scenarios to get where we need to be. We've now got our ideal inventory models. Number 3, we've gone and run our predictions into the future to make sure that when we replenish according to those models, it's actually going to take us where we want to go, and we understand how that's going to eventuate over time. So the next step would then be to go and have a look and do the ordering. So if we now click on the ordering, it's now going to bring up all the vendors I need to replenish from, and we can see exactly how many products we need to order, the quantity and the value. And in some circumstances, we have volume and weight. So in the software, we have a little facility which we won't cover in the session, but the ability to optimize for container loads based on volume and weight constraints and things like that. So let's just have a look at this top vendor here. I'm going to change this look forward to 1 day. And here we can see that it's recommending that we order 9 products today. That's the quantity and the value we need to order. So that's what we need to order today to order in line with our policy and keep our inventory at the right levels. But of course, this might be an overseas vendor, and we only place an order once a month with this vendor. So we might wish to look forward. Now you have this capability to look forward as far as you would like. So if you've got Chinese New Year, you could look forward 60 days ahead of time, or supplier shutdowns. You can look forward and generate all the orders you need to place ahead of time. So what am I doing here? By looking forward 30 days, it's simulated 30 days into the future and determined that there will be another 11 products that are going to drop below the reorder point, and we need to replenish them today. So if we now create that order, it's now going to bring up everything we need to replenish for the next 30 days. It'll show us the quantity we need to replenish, the lead time, when the item will arrive in stock, the cost, the value. You can see it's an A medium and it's currently out of stock. We can also hover above there and see what have we sold over the last 12 months, what are we expecting to sell over the next 12. So you can see a slight increase in forecast. You can also see that displayed in the average. Of course, as before, if we wish, we can click on the item and look at that individual product. If we want to interrogate anything, we can see the forecast, the graphic, those replenishment, future replenishment projections. When you're doing the ordering, of course, you might wish to deal with your emergencies first, so you can sort and deal with the emergency stock out, potential stock outs first. Or if you're short of money, maybe you want to look at the highest value order, so you can see that this item is perfectly balanced. It's an A high. That's the quantity we need to order. Anything from a replenishment perspective can obviously be changed. So if I want to reduce that to 800 because we're short of money and see the impact of that, I can see here we've reduced the order by $23,000 in this instance. So the idea here is it presents for you what you should replenish based on your future forecast, based on this ideal policy, and you can merely step your way through this. Here you can pick up any anomalies. So there you can see those two big forecasts in October and November, and you have the frozen snowflakes, so somebody must have manually adjusted them, and hopefully they captured a comment, which they did. So you can quickly identify anomalies and decide whether you're happy with that or not, and then make changes to the replenishment plan. You merely scroll your way through the list, accepting or adjusting anything that you want to change. And if you're then happy with it, you click that button. It'll create an actual order and send that back to your ERP system and create the actual purchase order. Works exactly the same way in terms of works orders and transfers in terms of a distribution structure. So now we've got our recommended orders that are now in line with our overall plan. So if I change the fill rate targets, obviously the recommended orders will change. Also, quickly, just so that we're aware, we can deal with things such as purchase unit of measures. So in this case, I'm buying in pallets, but I'm selling in units. So if I reduce this to 2 pallets, you'll see the recommended order is down to 160 units. And obviously the pallets and the units are in different dollar value scenarios. But this is a bit of an interesting one and may well be worth having a look at. Here's a product where we have some surplus orders, but it seems like we're still ordering some more stock. So that seems a little strange, but here you can actually see, let's just send it back to what it was before. We're telling the system to order 320 because we also have some constraints, so it's ordering in those multiples. But ideally, we don't need to order anything. So if we click on this product and interrogate it and see why that is. So here you can see we have the 8th of August is today's date. So let's look at the little projection going forward. And we can see here, it looks like we've over-ordered this product, clearly. So why is it recommending we order some? Well, if we have a look at this, the next time we need to order it is the 29th of August. Now, remember what we did? We looked forward 30 days. And in the next 30 days, from the 8th of August, that takes me to the 8th of September, I am going to need to order some on the 29th of August. And because we'd looked forward, what that meant is we'd actually brought that forward in today's orders. All right, so now we just need to look at the final phase of things, which is our performance measurement. And then we'll get on to some Q&A. So on the dashboard, what we have here is a quick view by warehouse, nationally combined if we wanted to have a look at that, or at any level in our supply chain, we get these dashboards. And the dashboards indicate to us over the last 13 days, 13 weeks, or 13 months our performance. We can quickly just flick and change through those. What it does for us, it records where we currently are against an ideal inventory model and how are we tracking against that. So here we can see we've ordered in line with the model and our stock is starting to come down, but we haven't quite achieved the model. It highlights for us why we haven't. So when we started here, we had a lot of excess stock. You can see the excess stock has been reduced. Then some surplus orders arrived. Now we're starting to get the stock, the excess down, but we still have quite a little bit of excess in in our inventory, and that's obviously preventing us from achieving that, so we have to work on getting that down. The dashboard highlights for us the worst 5 offenders in descending order. As before, you can interrogate them by clicking on them, or you can click and get a full list. Once you have a list, you can even download that list into Excel. We won't cover that in today's session because we don't have time for that. It highlights for us also where we've overordered. So pretty much on this top range, we'd like to see everything reducing. And you can see it is following that pattern, except maybe here we've started to overorder a little bit again. So we need to investigate that. Why have we done that? So excess overordering obviously prevent me from achieving the model. And then where does the forecast exceed the sales? This highlights the worst variance items, and we can easily go and review those and have a look at those. We don't have time for that, but we can click and get a full report and step through those in detail and see why are we over forecasting these products. By the same token, we measure the fill rate performance. So where are we? Where did we start at? So let's get to the benchmark, 80% fill rate. Over the last 13 weeks, we've got that up to 88. So we're going in the right direction. We've had a 20% stock reduction and an 8 percentage points improvement in fill rate, but we haven't achieved the ideal model yet. And remember, the model is based on the fill rate targets that we set and all those ideal inventory profiles that have been created. So that's the stock we need to support that fill rate target. Now, where we're not actually achieving those fill rate targets is because we have items that are currently out of stock. It highlights those for us. We can also see when we started, we had a huge amount of out of stocks. We've now reduced that significantly, but it's still fairly significant, and we need to do some more work here. In this environment, we have some very long lead times, over 200 days, so it's taking a bit of time to fix the problem. But again, highlights us for us the worst stock out items. We just quickly look on an individual product. We can see how it computes the stock outs for us. Here you can see I've got 18 on hand. I do have some custom orders for 1 and 3, which are past their promised delivery date. That's why they're in red. So 18 less 4 customer back orders, and I've got 18 allocated away. Maybe it's in picking, maybe it's a quality issue, maybe it's put aside for a special customer. So in reality, even though I've physically got 18, I have no available stock. So the software will then record a day out of stock for us. Here you can see it's recorded the last 4 days out of stock and 26 days in. So 26 out of 30 means we've had an 86% probability that we've been able to supply this product out of stock. And that's what's then summed up and weighted by value of forecast for each item to give us this overall picture. The system also highlights for us potential stock outs, where we're going to run out before the next order arrives. So remember, if we just clicked on that item, we can graphically see it. Here's an item where we seem to have enough on order, but we're actually going to run out before the next order arrives. So the dashboards are all about monitoring our performance. And what we like to see on the dashboards is everything reducing down. And from a fill rate perspective, we'd like to see that going up. So all the graphics heading down except for fill rate heading up. Okay, we've basically now covered all the elements in the presentation in terms of the software. There's a couple more slides and then we can head into the Q&A, but maybe what we'll do is the Q&A before we finish off with the couple of slides at the end. So maybe if you want to...
So should we head into that Q&A now, Andy?
Yes, let's do that.
Fantastic. So just to ask this first question from Dale, he's asking a question here: can we measure expiry dated stock items?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a little bit more of a relevant, obviously, to the food industry, and there we have to get a custom set of data where we actually get the expiry dates, and we use those expiry dates to help influence the future ordering. I won't be able to go into too much detail there, but we have a lot of customers in that space where product expiry is very relevant to them, and we can deal with that in detail if you'd like to just get hold of us and we can explain in detail how we deal with that.
Fantastic. Next question here from Felix. Can you create forecasts specific to particular customers as well as specific to particular products?
Absolutely. So we can create a structure where we do forecast by customer. Those are then rolled up to an item level for replenishment purposes, but you can adjust forecasts at the customer level, and you can get forecasting performance at the customer level and macro adjustments at that level as well.
That's great. And Wayne also asked a question in terms of how you can override the ABC classifications.
Okay, so in the software, our ABC, high, medium, low, you can set the parameters of how you want it to operate. If you wish to create an additional classification for the item like super A's or very, very slow movers, then that is a little custom procedure that we put in for you, and those can then be set. But in the software, it's your inputs as to what you'd like to be A, B, or C, what the percentages are that you use.
Fantastic. There's another question from Sam in a similar vein. How is the high, medium, low classified? Is that based on cubic size or by quantity counts?
So that's based on your velocity or movement of the product. So obviously, if a product is selling a lot of units, it'll move into the high, low, a medium amount of units, medium, and obviously it's selling very slowly, the low category. But it's based on unit movement.
Yep, fantastic. Question from Ranga, one of Kilimanjaro's account managers. Great to have you on board, Ranga. If I have multiple suppliers, how do I decide who to order the stock from?
Okay, good, great question. So I didn't show you that in the demo, but generally we always like to have a preferred vendor as a starting point. And the reason for that is when you're ordering from a vendor, it'll have a different lead time to a different vendor. It might have a different quality. It might have a different set of reliability in terms of how they supply. So the amount of stock you need to hold will be really different depending on which vendor you order from. But we record all the different vendors. You can order from whatever vendors you like. It'll always recommend the preferred vendor. And then when you're in the replenishment screen, you can actually click a little button and say, I'd like to move this order to a different vendor, maybe for reasons of cost or the fact that you have a local vendor that can supply it really quickly. It's more expensive, but you need an emergency order placed. So we have that capability as well.
Fantastic. A question here from Sam. All of their stock is consolidated within a container. For example, it might be 100 SKUs per container from multiple suppliers, say for example, 20 suppliers. Does that generally mean that our lead times are the same? So the lead time variance will be quite large per supplier?
Yeah, so that's a good point, right? So generally what we say is we try to create a standard stated lead time per vendor. And of course, if everything is going into a single container, then hopefully everything is going to arrive at the same point in time, and it's actually going to impact all of those products if they're delivering late for that entire range. So remember what we're doing is we're building up a complete history. So as every delivery comes in, we build up that history for each and all of our items as those container loads arrive.
Yeah, fantastic. A question here from Tamara. How do you see the stock turnover ratios within NETSTOCK?
So in NETSTOCK, everything is in days. When we looked, I didn't show you, but everything is shown to you in days of cover and how we're turning, and everything's against an ideal model. Remember when we looked at that little projection view into the future, it actually showed us the cover or the stock turns into the future. So it's right through the software. It always shows you days. You can get any type of reports that can give you either in stock turns or days of cover into the future for all of your products. And you can compare that against the ideal model days as well.
Fantastic. We had a question here from Tui as well in terms of what the process is to connect NETSTOCK into EXO and or advanced, and what results we can see once we connect the systems.
Yes, okay, so let me maybe just quickly talk a little bit about the results. So there's just a quick view of some of our customers. You can see for some really big down to some really small. The product obviously scales. Here you can see is a customer that took 35% out of stock and improved their fill rate by about 3 percentage points. Obviously that made a massive difference to that environment. And here we have another customer that took 30% out of stock and improved by 8 percentage points and said he couldn't believe how quickly we implemented. So in terms of connecting, literally to connect to EXO, it's probably a couple of hours work. And then within a couple of hours, what I pretty much showed you in the demo is available from day one. We then go through a process of helping you clean the data, set your inventory policy, training you on how to use the software and stuff, but the data is up and flowing very quickly. In terms of advanced, it's the same thing. It just takes a little bit longer, probably about a day to connect and get the data flowing. We have some pre-built integrations for both. In the case of advanced, we own both legs, the passing the data down and the data back up. In the case of EXO, we control the extract of data into the software, and Kilimanjaro have created the link to send it back in terms of purchase orders, works orders, and transfers. Hopefully that answered your question.
That's great, Andy. That was it in terms of questions. Actually, no, look, there have been a few others that have come in here. Question here from Ian: are you able to connect with other systems potentially overseas that might not be EXO or advanced?
Yes, we do have, and you can have a look on our website that we do connect with a variety of other systems such as NetSuite and Sage and Pronto and so forth. It's actually on our website. You can see which systems we connect to.
Another question here from Andy. Like any software, training of users is critical to get the best out of the system. What training is provided and how is it delivered?
Okay, so training is pretty much the biggest focus in our onboarding projects. So we have a whole learning management system with a set of pre-recorded videos, little e-learning tasks. We also have instructor-led training, which sits on top of that, where we have numerous sessions where we actually take you through the software, and then we actually interact with you in our project onboarding, and we do forecasting, setting inventory policy, ordering with you, reviewing projections, and we do all of that with you as part of our onboarding process. So there is a big focus. The bulk of our focus of our project is in helping you use the product effectively, much less on the technical side, because we have these pre-built integrations. There is a bit of work sometimes on the technical side, especially if you need custom requirements and things.
Fantastic. Another question from Ian, which is probably appropriate at this point. What's the ballpark pricing, Andy?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. Pricing is essentially based on your inventory value. It's different to other SaaS products. So we don't charge you per user. You can have as many users as you like. There's two charges to our cost. One is an implementation cost. And Brad, while I'm talking, maybe you could just have a look up for the bottom end and sort of the top end of 10 million for us, and we can talk through that. So so there's a cost to implement and train, which is a fixed fee, and it's a one-off. And then there's an ongoing monthly subscription fee, which maybe Brad, you can tell us at the bottom end what that sort of looks like, and then what it looks like sort of for the larger size customers. Oh, he's still getting there. Okay, while he's doing that, we'll come back to the actual pricing. Just wanted to mention before we conclude that we're all, as people that have attended the webinar, if you book in a demo with us where we do a customized demo for your environment before the 31st of December, and you actually become a customer of ours before the 21st of January, we'll take 20% off the implementation fee for that period. Brad, have you got some numbers for us?
Yep. So in the lower end of our implementations, around $330 per month, and about $3,700 for full implementation and training, ranging from about $10,000 and $1,000 monthly. Just an estimate around that 10 million inventory.
So the 300 or the 330 per month that Brad's talked about is for unlimited users. So if you have 500 people using the software, that's the full cost. Also, what you should be aware of, that monthly cost covers the support as well. So the only time you pay extra, other than the numbers that Brad's kind of communicated to you, would be if you want some customizations or something very specific to your environment. If it's vanilla, we'll support you for as long as you continue to pay the subscription There's online support, there's Zoom support, there's phone support, email support, and so forth.
Just to add to that, Andy, in terms of the EXO integration, where there is an EXO integration requirement and you want to have the purchase orders, work orders, or transfers automatically sent into EXO, there is a small percentage fee for the NETSTOCK interface through Kilimanjaro as well, which we can discuss in detail.
Absolutely. So the pricing really is, as we said, is related to inventory. If you're interested in a demo, we'll obviously give you a price for your project there and then at that demo, and we've pretty much committed to the price in terms of it being a fixed fee and the subscription amount.
We have got a few more questions that have come in, Andy.
Sure.
So I might just cover those off. Just to be clear on pricing, does the pricing scale start at $0 to $10 million worth of inventory? What's the minimum inventory level?
So the base level is the number that Brad mentioned, and that starts at about 500,000. So anything between 0 and 500,000 gives us that base level. It does go above 10 million. So if you've got 50 million, then of course it'll prorate itself up. So we're just given between 0 and 10 because that happens to be the bulk of where our customers sit.
Perfect. And one more question from Michael. How would changing over suppliers for a specific SKU work with respects to the forecasting in NETSTOCK?
Okay, so there's two things there, obviously. So a forecast is a forecast because a forecast is what I expect to sell. So that shouldn't be amended or shouldn't have any impact if I change the vendor. What changing the vendor does has an impact on the amount of inventory we need to hold and how we're going to replenish that, because it could have a different lead time, it could have different safety stocks, etc. So if you change the vendor in EXO or advanced, it'll automatically reflect through to NETSTOCK. NETSTOCK will pick up all the associated parameters related to the safety stocks, the lead times, etc. with that vendor, and will automatically adjust the forecasting in line with that. So it's an automated process as soon as you change the vendor.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, look, I think that's all of the questions that we have, Andy. I'd like to thank you again for your time. I think we're running just a few minutes over. So we will finish up. Hopefully everybody who's been on the session has gotten some great value out of that. Certainly there's nothing like a personalized demo though. So we do encourage you to reach out to the team at Kilimanjaro and Enterprise. We can arrange a session for you with Andy and Brad to look at the software in more detail and just understand exactly how it works within your environment. And we have a large number of clients that have really benefited from NETSTOCK. It's a great solution, and we look forward to the opportunity of discussing it with you further. Thanks again, everybody. Have a fantastic day. And thank you again to Andy and Brad for your time. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thanks,
you,
Stephen.
Stephen.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.